The Pyro S is Hollyland's latest wireless video transmission system, and what separates it from the Pyro H, for example, is it has SDI as well as HDMI. They also have a Pyro 7, which is the 7-inch monitor version of this system. I don't have that, but let's talk about the three main ways to use systems like this. I'm using number 3 right now. Probably one of the most common and straightforward uses for a wireless video system is to have a live feed for other people on set. And probably the two most common or important people that you'd need to have a live feed is the first AC to pull focus if you're using manual lenses, and the director, which I feel like I don't really have to explain. How I have this set up now is I have the transmitter on the main camera, and then I have the receiver on this little unit here. And this is the Fieldworld F5 Pro X, and one of the good things about it is it has an NPF pass-through plate on the back here, which can power any device that takes L-series batteries. And the benefit to that is I can mount and power the receiver without needing any cables or batteries. The only cable I need is this Condor Blue right angle HDMI cable to go from the output of the receiver and the input of the monitor. And because of the direction that the battery plate is here, I can't actually have all 3 antennae on here right now, so I just have one. I can put them on, but they bend and it just sort of doesn't feel like they should be bending that much. So the connection's not going to be as good as it possibly could be with this exact setup, but it's not too bad. You could also obviously run a smaller battery, or if you ran like a dummy battery or DC straight into the monitor, you wouldn't really have that issue. You just have another way to power it. Of course, there will be some latency with any wireless video system that you use, but the Pyro S does have a setting where you can change to have either the lowest latency or the best image, so you can adjust that depending on what the priority is there. If this monitor was for a client or a director, then I could just give this unit to them or put it on a stand and they could just look at it there. Ideally, you'd have a bigger monitor for a case like this, but if you only have one person looking at it, it's probably not a big deal. 5 inches should be good enough for one person to look at. And then if I had a first AC pulling focus, then I would put, you know, this little unit on a stand, for example, and then they would have their wireless follow focus system like Tilta Nucleus Nano 2 to pull focus on those manual lenses. Okay, now to a little bit more of a niche use of this system. So this is my full FX30 rig with the notable exception of this second monitor right here. And how I have that is, this is a live feed of this camera right here. So there's like a couple scenarios where I can see this sort of setup being beneficial. The first would be if you're at like an event or a wedding, you have a second shooter, you can be, you know, manning your A camera here on your main monitor, but then have a wireless feed of your other operator's camera where you can sort of see what they're shooting, so you can either adjust what you're doing, or if you have like a comm system or a way to talk to them, then you could just direct them from here while also operating your own camera. Or even if you don't have a second shooter, you could still at a wedding or an event or something like that, or even on set, you could have one camera set up without an operator, and you could be operating this camera while still being able to see the feed from the other camera. So it's sort of like a video village, but on the A cam. Now, I've never shot weddings, but I could imagine this being a sort of useful setup, either solo shooting with multiple cameras or with a small crew. This type of rig does benefit from having the receiver attached directly to the second monitor. And as far as I know, the only ways you can do that is either have a built-in like all-in-one system with the transceiver in the monitor, or by having, you know, one of these Fieldworld monitors, or I think actually Portkeys has a way to adapt an NPF plate to add another accessory and power them both. So there's a few different solutions out there for situations like this. But you could always just mount and power them separately if you have room on the rig. And finally, we have the situation like I was doing at the start of this video, where I have my primary monitor here because I just cannot see any monitor on camera. So this would be the case of if you're shooting everything yourself and you're also in the video, you know, like I'm doing right now, I have no one here helping me. And especially because I particularly like shooting on longer focal lengths, like I'm shooting my 7200 right now, and I just have to sit further away to be in a good frame on those longer focal lengths. So something like this can help a lot with framing or focus. If I'm doing manual focus, then, you know, I'll use the Tilta Nucleus Nano 2 to adjust that so I've got the wireless video and the wireless focus system. Because trying to see framing and focus, especially on the camera LCD or even a 5 or 7 inch monitor from, 5 meters away, is not ideal. So right now I have the transmitter on the camera I'm shooting on now, and then the receiver on this little, director's monitor unit again. So that means I can monitor exactly what I'm seeing, and I know that I can see when the flares are hitting. I know the background's blown out. Dynamic range is just a thing. And this is a lot better than, either going back and forth and checking, or just winging it and hoping. This method could also be used on set when you can't physically operate the camera. Like if you have the camera mounted to the outside of a car, or really high out of reach of anyone, or in a really small space where you can't fit an operator, so you can't have someone operating or even monitoring the camera, you have a wireless system for that. So that's 3 of the main uses for a wireless video system like this. So let's go through now the Pyro S in particular as a system. And just to be clear, I bought this. Hollyland didn't respond to my message, so they're not sponsoring this video. But looking at the units themselves, they have both HDMI and SDI ports. Now, I don't have any other SDI devices right now, but the reason that I got the Pyro S over the Pyro H is kind of like a future-proofing move, because I know that whatever camera I upgrade to next will have SDI, and same thing with monitors, as well as the actual video ports. Each of the units has an NPF battery slot on the back there. It has an on-off switch here, USB-C port, and locking DC port for power. Now the USB port does use the UVC protocol, so you can plug it into a computer and do like live streams and stuff like that through this, but there's no power pass through with the USB, so you can't power these by USB, which is kind of annoying. That being said, a locking DC connector is going to be better and more secure than USB-C, so it's not really a big deal. On the top, there's the 3 antenna ports right there, so it does come with 7 for the kit. There's 3 on here. I've got 1 on here now because I had that battery on there, but there is 1 for each of those ports, and then there's 1 extra that come in the kit. They are a little bit like flexible, but it feels, like I said before, it feels kind of wrong to bend them too much, so yeah, do with that what you will. And then on the front, actually, as you can see here, there's a little screen with 3 buttons. And that is just to navigate through the menus, which are very basic and very simple, so like easy to get through. There's not that many settings to change, so you don't really need, a full touch screen or anything like that. 3 buttons is easy enough. As for capabilities, Hollyland claims this can transmit up to 400 meters. Now that would probably be line of sight, as low as 50 milliseconds of latency, up to 4K 30, and uses both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequency ranges. Now, all of those can't be true at the same time. There are settings where you can change, where you can either go latency or picture quality, and you're just not always going to get the best of everything at the same time, but it's good that it can do all of them. Also, while the regular kit, the one that I got, only comes with 1 receiver and 1 transmitter, you can connect 1 transmitter to up to 4 receivers if you turn on broadcast mode. And with broadcast mode, it'll halve the distance it can go to, but it means you can go to up to 4 receivers. If you have broadcast mode turned off, it can go to 2 receivers and also 2 wireless devices, mobile devices, phones, tablets, for example, through the Hollyland app, or HollyView app, I think it's called. And speaking of modes, there's a smooth mode and an HD mode, so you can prioritize either picture quality or latency. And with smooth mode, it'll adjust the bit rate to keep, a consistent latency. And in HD mode, it'll adjust the latency to keep the same or a relatively consistent bit rate, so the image doesn't deteriorate at the expense of latency. Anyway, that's about it on the Hollyland Pyro S. Let me know your thoughts. Do all the other things. Go watch another video, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.